Welcome back. You're watching NewsX. I'm Rishabh Gulati. Breaking developments coming in from the SCO Summit taking place in Tianjin, China, where Nepalese Prime Minister KP Oli has now held a bilateral meeting with the Chinese President Xi Jinping on the sidelines of the summit. Within the meeting, we are told he has raised an objection to an India-China agreement on using the Lipu Lake Pass for overland trade. The Prime Minister of Nepal has also, in that conversation, as per a statement released by the Nepalese administration, reaffirmed the 1816 Sugauli Treaty, which states that all land east of Mahakali belongs to Nepal. This was an issue that had been raised by the Nepalese just a few days ago. Before this summit meeting started, India's Foreign Ministry, the Ministry of External Affairs, has already responded to this, that the Lipu Lake trade has been going on for an established strength of time, but he's raised this issue there. So you can clearly understand that in this present moment, if you were sitting and observing it from a New Delhi prism, had Nepalese Prime Minister Oli been meeting with Xi Jinping independently, is not something that we would have been thrilled with. What has happened between Chinese influence in Nepal, or at least attempted influence in Nepal in the past few years, has been very troubling. The Chinese are trying to build infrastructural railroads, road links via Tibet into Nepal. And the Nepalese in turn, at least during a spate of time, have reopened border considerations with India, which has been rather bizarre if you've been observing a history of the past 30-40 years. So this in effect would have been a troubling meeting for India, but of course it is happening on the sidelines of a summit where India's Prime Minister himself is attending. So the Lipu Lake issue has been raised by the Nepalese. Whether this has a bearing on the larger rubric of things, we can't yet establish ourselves. I'll open up this conversation to our guests who are joining us as we break more information coming our way. Ambassador Yogesh Gupta is with us, Major General Sudhakarji joining us, Hindol Sen Gupta joining us, Vijay Kranti on the broadcast with us as well. Let me come straight to you, General Sudhakar. General Sudhakar, as I just mentioned, if this was KP Oli meeting with Xi Jinping on any other occasion at any other time, this was something that we would have been rather unhappy with and troubled by. But given the context of things that is happening, how do we absorb the issues that the Nepalese are raising, which have a direct bearing on India?
Yeah, Rishabh, firstly, good evening. Thank you for getting me to your show, and great point you have raised. In my opinion, this was expected. Those who have been actually joining the dates and dots and updating themselves. I, for one, as a student of geopolitics, I definitely would have expected. But then you have made a very relevant point. Under the circumstances where the entire global order is experiencing huge geopolitical churn, Lipu Lake issue is a very tiny issue, and it is a non-issue. An insignificant, irrelevant issue has been made relevant because of turn of events just to draw attention and put pressure on India. That is how I look at it. And second point I wish to highlight is that this is a huge master game plan which is being orchestrated by China. Let's say it's a happy note to actually celebrate in a quiet manner. This is a damn good turnaround, I would say, with China. It's a fantastic U-turn. Let the leadership take the path of some kind of a normalcy and let them lead. Take the world to some degree of understanding, rationality, and peace and harmony. But doesn't mean that India is either going to ignore the issues, which is an established norm and a fact based on which the maps have been existing. And suffice to say, these are all minor pinpricks which neither should be ignored.
Okay, so for people watching the broadcast, for your information, there is in the northern Indian state of Uttarakhand, which shares a border with Tibet, there is something called a tri-junction area, which is the western border of Nepal, the border of India and the border of Tibet. They meet at this point which is called the Lipu Lake Pass. Lipu Lake Pass joins the Indian territories and the Indian mountains of Uttarakhand into the Tibetan plateau. Now this is where cross-border trade takes place. It's not a lot of cross-border trade, and this is where people also, if you are trying to travel to or observe Kailash Mansarovar, you would go via this route. The Nepalese have claimed the southern side of this pass, which of course is a territorial dispute. It's never been one of significance that has actually caused bilateral hardship to any measure in the India-Nepal Association or the India-China Association or the Chinese-Nepalese Association in several decades. So it's a strange thing that's being raised. It could be a modicum of a formality or it could be something else. But the big ticket item, of course, is that the Nepalese Prime Minister has met with the Chinese President, and trust me, they discussed other things and not just the Lippo Lake Pass. And India has security concerns over the things that they've discussed, because the Chinese are building railways and roadways from Tibet into Nepal. That has a direct bearing on coming into a front line with India, because remember the case history of what's happened in the past couple of years, as well as the fact that India and Nepal have a long border, which is a very friendly border at this point of time. And the last thing you want to see is a lot of Chinese who claim a lot of territories in Bhutan, Nepal, to be sitting on the other side of it under whatever pretext. More breaking developments meanwhile coming in. This is another bilateral meeting that has taken place between the Chinese President Xi Jinping on the sidelines of the SCO Summit, this time with Kazakh President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev, where they've been discussing $44 billion of record trade that has taken place between the two countries. Kazakhstan, of course, is a member of the SCO within the logic of why the SCO was created, which was dealing with Central Asia, which of course also has immediate bearings and concerns. This is the area where the Chinese are looking to establish a sphere of influence. This is where they want to build the Belt and Road Initiative, to the new Silk Road to connect to Europe and to the West. And this is the area which still has large natural resources, including oil and gas, which are of course of a global concern. Let me use that opportunity to have a quick point of conversation with Ambassador Yogesh Gupta. Ambassador Gupta, before we come to the crux of the matter, which is Prime Minister Modi and Xi Jinping will be meeting in a few hours from now, there are a lot of bilaterals happening, and not all of the bilaterals will be discussing things that are of positive interest for India. A lot of them will of course be discussing things which we will not be considering kindly. How do we establish these bilaterals in the global context right now?
Well, I think this is the occasion for everyone to sort of focus on the bigger picture, which is that as the US NSA, Jack Sullivan of former President Biden said that the American brand, because of what its President Trump has done over the past several months, is in the toilet, and more countries are now trying to get away from America and either try to get to BRICS or try to get to SCO. And again, I mean, you see so many heads of state. I think around 20 heads of state and government, who have converged on in Tianjin. And when they meet, I mean, they will, particularly in the bilateral meetings, they will of course raise issues of their concern. And as far as India is concerned, I think for us, this bilateral meeting with President Xi Jinping is of great significance.
Okay, I'm going to come to that issue in just a second, because a lot of developments are taking place on the ground. I want to absorb them because all of them have meritorious importance to what is going on. More information coming in. This is in just the past 1 hour. Myanmar junta leader Min Aung Hlaing has also met with President Xi Jinping in Tianjin. Visuals of that now on your screens. This is his second visit to China since he took over in a coup about 4 years ago. Again, Ambassador, that's a complicated association. We have a military junta in Myanmar. We want to establish our own associations, which we have in the past. We have a border area with Myanmar. Many people would argue that a lot of issues happening in India's northeast come across the border from Myanmar, and the Chinese role in Myanmar has been long suspect. So what do we do with this?
Well, both India and China are major players in this region. And we, of course, have taken care to ensure that we are able to safeguard our critical interests. We have extremely good relations with Nepal, similarly close relations with Myanmar. But then the leaders of these countries will also meet the president of China, and they have their own relationship. So I think that is something which we have to accept, and that's something that we have to keep a keen watch as to what is happening in those discussions.
Okay,
Because
so whole
we have
laundry
to
list.
safeguard
There is a
our
whole
interests.
laundry list, and let's not kid ourselves, because as this meeting is concluded, the next meeting has just started. Information coming our way and photographs now being put on your screens. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the Maldivian president Muidzu, who's also arrived for the SCO summit, and this is the first participation of the Maldives at head of government level in the summit since it became a dialogue partner just 2 years ago. You are seeing photographs of the red carpet in which the Maldivian president, now he was in India a few months ago. I would like to think that the low point which we reached in the India-Maldivian relationship sometime last year has now sorted itself out, that we are in a better position right now. But this was a man saying get out India a month ago, and many people would say he was saying get out India at the behest of the Chinese. Let me get Mr. Vijay Kranti here. Mr. Vijay Kranti, if you wanted to have a straightforward conversation, we are going to be unable to have it, because this perhaps is the greatest smorgasbord of inconsistencies that we will have to navigate over the next 24 hours. So let's take on the issue of Maldives. The Maldivian president is there. We are in a better association, but we have a strong issue with the Chinese hand, with the reasonable suspicion that the Chinese want to build a submarine base in the Maldives.
Yes, that is your, Chinese games. We know already very well about Maldives, and the way, the Maldivian president's presence is there, and you just now spoke about the issue, a bilateral issue, which normally are forbidden in SCO. Nepal raising a bilateral issue. These things, I think, one is maybe China is deliberately using these issues. For example, inviting or showing the presence of Maldives president and raising issues of Nepal's Lipu Lake on this front, this forum. Maybe China is trying to put some psychological pressure on India. But I think India doesn't have to worry right now or focus too much on those issues.
Yes.
Because these are all old issues and India can.
Because you and I know what the big issue right now is. And let's jump in on that.
Right now, yeah.
Yeah, let's jump in on that. I'll come back to you one by one. And let me jump in on that straight with Hindol. Hindol, so here we are. Okay. As a student of history, of geopolitics, as a journalist, as a person who's been involved in policy making, how confused are all of us right now about what is going on and what to do next?
In all humility, I am not confused at all. May I just say that in India, we tend to be a little, knee-jerk about these things. I do not think, let me just say this, I do not think that India, with its size, scale, and ambition, is like a yo-yo. So we have trouble with America. Immediately in Delhi, everybody starts to say, oh, look, we have swung towards China. It doesn't work like
that. Can we just mute our guests who are not currently speaking, please? Carry on, Hindol.
It doesn't work like this. It shouldn't work like this. In my humble opinion, the troubles we have with America are really momentary. This cloud will shift sooner rather than later. It is true that because of the long history we've had with China, we indeed need to build some kind of bridges. But I always come from a Patelian perspective in this, Rishabh. You know that I would be skeptical about what China really wants and what its intentions really are. I heard you discuss Nepal. I have absolutely no doubt that the Chinese interventions in Nepal are not going to be good for us, many of them. So we need to be really skeptical about this. I'm not saying we should not build bridges. We must, and that we at a level we have no choice also. But we should be skeptical about how far we want to go with the Chinese, and
I've known you long enough.
The Chinese want to go with us.
Yeah, I've known you long enough. You've known me long enough. So we know we are fundamentally skeptical of an India-China associations. Okay, we, for the better part of our careers, have been advocating that healthy skepticism, because they are existential issues. These are not disputes, these are existential issues. This is literally thousands of square kilometers of our territory. This is literally our borders. This is literally the influence that the Chinese are peddling and the military bases that they aspire to build around India in what they call the string of pearls. But then there's a movie, Hindol Sen Gupta, called Sound of Music, in which the second song was, how do we solve a problem like Maria? So how do we solve a problem like Donald Trump?
It is not up to us to solve a problem like Donald Trump. Let me be contrarian and say this. America is already moving towards solving a problem like Donald Trump. Already you see the Supreme Court judgment, Rishabh. I'm sure you've seen it. There is already severe pushback, and let the midterm season roll in. This cloud will shift. There are already voices, including the FANG companies, who are pushing back against this. These tariffs are neither sustainable nor, in fact, as the US Supreme Court says, nor, in fact, in many cases are they legal. This is a knee-jerk reaction from a man who wants a particular kind of attention, but the mood is already shifting. And before we know it, this tariff issue between India and America will indeed be resolved. Trump is a blip. We should look, the India-US relationship is much bigger, much wider than Trump.
I completely agree with you. But the problem starts happening is when that blip stretches itself out. So we've seen it, a couple of weeks, then a month, then 2 months, and now it's turning into 3. At this point of time, there are exporters whose primary markets are America who have concerns. We are now planning our own internal stimulus, the largest indirect rationalization, but in fact, it's the largest indirect tax cut in India in the past 10 years. It's already become a realization, because let's be practical, we are all expecting some hit, and now the hit will be the worst on the Americans. The mathematics is very simple. If we do $250 billion of trade with the Americans, let's say 10% of that will be affected by these 50% tariffs. In effect, you're talking of a disruption of $4-5 billion. It's absorbable. But the language, the rhetoric, you can also perhaps get past. You can move on from that. But fundamental shifts, difficult to get past. So let me put that same question to General Sudhakar. General Sudhakar, here we are. Okay, like I began the question with the inconsistencies, because the next person who will be meeting with Xi Jinping and landing in Tianjin shortly will be Shahbaz Sharif. So let's face it, these are not exactly happy circumstances, but these circumstances have been driven by the fact that the one thing that India, China, Russia agree on right now is that Donald Trump has lost the plot. What do we do?
Yeah, Rishabh, I would respond. Firstly, let me compliment Mr. Sengupta Hindol. I tend to agree with him when he says, well, I was little while back, maybe a couple of month and a half back, I was in Bay Area and also traveling extensively in America. I came across a terminology being used by very informally by very meaningful people. It's called a taco. What is taco? Taco is Trump always chickens out. This is what. And second thing I learned, I must share it through you, is that there is an invisible hero of Trump. Perhaps nobody knows. And that hero takes your mind back. Since you are a student of history, you will understand and appreciate. There was a president in USA 1897 to 1901. If I respect my memory, he was William Kensley or something like this, same name. And the president, his main passion was to run the federal budget out of tariff. He tried, he burnt his fingers, he very successfully became unsuccessful. And thereafter, he abandoned the idea. Trump has taken a leaf. Whatever he's doing, this tamasha and this rhetoric and adding on to the confusion, sooner or later, it's going to boomerang and it's going to fall flat. It is going to do more harm to the Americans, the consumers. Reagan administration had carried out an extensive study on the same tariff. They came to the conclusion that tariff is not a double-edged, it's a single-edged weapon. It comes back very heavily on the face of the consumers of the
Okay.
America, and it leads to extensive unemployment, very
Okay.
high rate of
I
unemployment.
just had a conversation with an American who is currently in Europe, and he said we should all be grateful for what Donald Trump is doing. And he said you in
Yeah,
India should be grateful that he is dismantling the Bretton Woods system. He is dismantling the concept of blocks because NATO is up for grabs, the special association is up for grabs, even America, Canada can't be taken for granted anymore. So it's all up for grabs. So you should be actually be grateful at this dismantling of the system that is taking place, because then we can all reset our association, and that's for the good of the world. Vijay Kranti, is this happening that okay? We've been stuck in a global order which has been America dominated. That global order is ripping itself as it seems because it does not account for where China is and where India is. And what is currently taking place is perhaps a good thing. Good it ends.
Yes, I agree with you, and I would say that many times things come out of come as blessings out in disguise. And here we are getting a president who was very friendly to India, very friendly to our Prime Minister Modi, and suddenly he changes his colors and takes just opposite. And in the process, he has told us directly or indirectly that we should stop relying too much on America and we should think of better markets around. So we all will see that in coming months, Indian exporters will be surely in trouble or anxiety. But the net result after that is when India prepares to counteract all these steps of Trump, India will be a great winner because
Okay.
our exporters will have far bigger markets than the present
Okay,
America.
just stay with me, sir.
Yeah.
Breaking developments coming in because China's news agency Xinhua has just published an interview with Russian President Putin as he gets ready to arrive in Beijing. In the interview, Putin says that relations between Russia and China are at an unprecedentedly high level. Bilateral trade is up $100 billion since 2021. He also says that transactions are increasingly being carried out in rubles and yuan. Dollar and euro reliance is being reduced, and he insists in saying that Russia remains a leading energy supplier to China with more than 100 BCM of gas already delivered through the Siberia pipeline. He's also made a call for reform of the United Nations, including greater global South representation in the UN Security Council. That's something that India is also looking for. He has also said that he's ready to discuss all aspects of cooperation with President Xi, and has also warned that some Western states are trying to falsify World War II results to distort history. He continues in saying that he intends to cover regional and global hotspots in his conversation with Xi Jinping, and acknowledging that Russia remains a top market for Chinese exports. He's also given a commitment to developing ties on an equal and respectful mode. Well, let me get good Ambassador on this. Ambassador, on the face of it, what President Putin is saying is the facts on the ground. Chinese-Russian bilateral ties are at an unprecedented record high. The bilateral trade is at an unprecedented record high. You could well argue that it is the Chinese trade, investment, purchase of oil that is keeping the Russian economy afloat, not the Indian.
Well, certainly China is a much bigger economy than us, and China's purchases of oil and gas and other commodities from Russia are obviously much more than those of India. So no surprise there, and I think a lot of it is happening because President Trump is always so confused and he's always changing his stance, and he's so inconsistent, so unreliable, that countries have stopped, relying on him at all. And the net result of this is that countries are trying to figure out more dependable partners. You have seen the visit of our Prime Minister to Japan, and this has been a hugely successful visit. And what has happened between India and Japan is unprecedented. $68 billion of investments, and the two countries coming to each other to help in their economic security, in the conventional security, high technologies, emerging technologies, human resources, sharing human resources. I mean, this. So similarly, the Russians they are seeking close relations with China, with India, and other countries. So it's all because of the churn in the global situation.
Okay, so let me leave then the last word before I take a quick break, and because a lot of developments are happening, and my colleagues who are there on the ground in Tianjin are joining us live after this. But Hindol, should we give the devil his due? Okay. Trump has had a good association with India in his first presidency. He's had a very good association with Narendra Modi. He's come to India several times. They've gone to Ahmedabad, they've gone to Houston. Many people would have argued, both in India and the US, that it was an uncomfortably good, way too good association, to the point that it was India picking favorites in a US presidential election kind of situation. So, is there a method to the madness? Is the fact that this global order is stuck in these old blocks of NATO and this and that and the Bretton Woods system, and that actually the shake-up is good for everyone?
No, Rishabh, look, I mean, whether this is because of Trump's smartness or whether he is willing to take a blunt hammer at the entire system, you're absolutely right that many of these institutions were way past their sell-by date. I want to conclude by telling you one thing, Rishabh, which I'm sure you remember very clearly. Today, we are talking about this tariffs issue as if it is the most earth-shatteringly negative thing that has happened between India and the US. But both you and I remember, Rishabh, Robin Raphael saying that America will not even accept Kashmir's accession to India. We saw, I mean, we who know history know there were those days too. We have come across all of that time to this point. In my mind, the tariff issues are a big negative and they will cast a long shadow, but that this is nothing compared to what we have already crossed with America. And I actually think there's much more to the India-America relationship than this, I reiterate, than this blip, a long blip, but a blip.
Well, Robin Raphael, the US former ambassador to Pakistan, did say that. And yes, yeah, I mean, imagine if you were sitting and watching the 7th Fleet sail up the Hooghly and thinking that was the lowest of lows. So yes, in comparative terms, if you were sitting in the Clinton administration post Pokhran, you would think that's the lowest of low. There have been the highest of highs. Bush, Manmohan, and the nuclear deal have been part of them. To give credit, Biden maintained the momentum under Trump. Maybe you can argue not at the same level, but India-US relations have a natural arc of history. But what is happening right now is inexplicable. Nobody can figure out why it is happening. How the Ukraine war became our war all of a sudden is not making sense to anyone. So it is confusing. I'm going to take a very short break. Lots of dramatic developments are happening. What on your screens right now is the bilateral meeting that is taking place between the Chinese presidents and various heads of state who are attending. On the other side, we'll get you details. My colleague Megha Sharma live from Tianjin on the other side. See you in a minute.